Hello, everyone, and welcome into today's session, The Ultimate Guide to Passing CBAP and CCBA, presented by our Director of Business Solutions here at Watermark Learning, Dr. Susan Hydorn. My name is Mariela, and I will be assisting in moderating today's session. We are on Zoom for today's session, and we will be emailing you a copy of the recording tomorrow after the webinar. We do encourage participation throughout the session, so please use the chat or that Q&A option for our short Q&A after the presentation. Educate 360 and Watermark Learning are so excited to present this webinar today. So without further ado, I'll hand it right over to you, Dr. Hydorn.
Thank you, Mariela. All right, is everyone set? They're excited. We are going to talk about CCBA and CBAP certification. So hopefully you're all here for that. We are going to give you some tips and some things to think about in this session as we get started, because getting your CCBA or CBAP is a journey. It really is. And so hopefully you'll have some tips, and you'll all be so excited to prep for your certification that we'll keep it moving. And I'm also going to encourage, as Mariela said, to put any questions in the chat. Because I want the session to be for you. I just don't want to drone on. So if you have any questions about the exam or things you need to do as I'm going through, please just bring up your questions, because this session is really for all of you who are deciding or determining whether to get your certification or not. So without further ado here, so why are we getting your certification? And before we go into the slide reasons why many people get their certification, I'm curious as to why are you here? Why do you think getting your certification is important? So if you want to throw it in the chat, I would love to hear from you. Is why do you want to get your certification? Because I'm going to say that it is a journey. It's not one of the exams that you can just, take an hour to do the exam and study in less than a week. It takes time, and we'll talk about that as we move on. But it always helps, especially if you're doing something that's going to take you a month to 3 months to study for, and you've got other things, and you got family, and you got the kids, and, the dog needs walking. I mean, there's so many other things to do besides study. That what I found when I'm studying for my certifications is remembering, why am I putting in all this effort to get this certification? So any thoughts, anyone? I'd love to hear from you. And if you just can put it in the chat. I certainly can share ones that I see a lot, and that will be coming up, but love to hear from you. So while we're waiting for responses, I think I'll just start. One is certainly professional recognition. It's like, hey, I know my stuff. I do want to get my CBAP or CCBA. So some of it is kind of an identity thing, personal recognition that you went through it and you made it, One certainly is career advancement. There are times where I've been working with organizations and they say, well, if you want to move to the next level, got to have your certification. Brandy, thanks. Do a lot of business analysis work. Just thought I would check into it. Yes. And the nice thing about getting your certification, it kind of says, yeah, I know my stuff, right? Troy, thank you. Continued growth. Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, and like I said, it is a journey, and you're going to learn things that you thought you knew and you did, and learn things that are new. Enhanced knowledge, I think that goes with that continued in growth, A lot of times people come to our classes and just say, hey, I just want to make sure that I actually know what I'm talking about. And you know what? It gives you some confidence, because I had been a business analyst for a very long time before I got my certification. And I was kind of like, oh, do I really need my certification? I've been doing this for a while. But then I thought, okay, I'm just gonna get it done. And of course, I was teaching part-time besides consulting at the time, and they wanted me to be certified. So I said, okay, fine, fine. But what I found out, it really gave me a lot more confidence. It's like, yeah, I do know my stuff, so sometimes it's just being validated. That's like, okay, I'm not just crazy. I'm following best practices. Um, yeah, more skills to challenge obstacles in a difficult environment. That is so true, Kathleen. Yeah. Certainly networking opportunities. You get to know know other people that are taking the class. A lot of times, if you have a local IIBA chapter, they will also put on certification classes, and then you get to kind of know each other. Um, Competitive advantage. If you're looking for a job or you're looking for, career advancement in your own organization, a lot of times, when a job gets posted and that, two or three, four people can apply, and sometimes having a certification gives you a competitive advantage. Client and stakeholder confidence. I was an external consultant. That gave my client a lot more confidence, not only myself, but them saying, oh, well, I'm hiring someone who I think must know this stuff because they are certified. A little bit more mobility, if I think that the grass is greener on the other side, I can take my little certification with me. That's the nice thing about certification. It goes wherever you go and doesn't stay with just your organization. And then an employer, whoever your organization is, gets benefits as well, because they say, hey, our business analysts are certified, that makes them look a lot better as well. So, eligibility, how do you stack up? There is eligibility requirements for both CCBA and CBAP. So, target audience, just in case you go, okay, do I do CBAP or CCBA? I would say wherever you have the most credit, because if you're really close to CBAP, too many acronyms here, close to CBAP, go for CBAP. You don't have to take them both, because sometimes people think, oh, I got to take CCBA, then I can take CBAP. That's not true. If you don't have a lot of hours, take CCBA is perfectly fine. But if you're really close to the CBAP hours that you need, or maybe you're over already, I would go for the CBAP. So the target audience for each is that the CBAP is for people who have over 5 years experience, because you need 7,500 hours in the last 10 years. You might be a current CCBA, but you're certainly a seasoned business analyst because you had to put in your time. A lot of consultants and trainers as well. And so for that, you need a lot of hours, like I said, in the past 10 years. A minimum, there's 6 knowledge areas, which we'll talk about here. A minimum of 900 hours in each of those knowledge areas. And you may not know what the knowledge areas are yet, but we will see this shortly. And then 35, you do need professional development hours. So you need 35 hours in the last 4 years. So that has to be anything it has to be with an instructor, a certified instructor, and or you can, I would say most people get their 35 credit hours sitting through the certification class. So if you have a IIBA chapter that offers that, if you find a training firms such as Watermark Learning, which we do have certifications in both of those, they do cover the 35 credit hours you need, so you don't need to get any other professional development. You do need to provide 2 references. Those references have to either be a CBAP or your manager, so somebody who you report to. If you are in consulting like I was, you can also have a client do it, but you can't just have your best friend say that, you have the hours. They can be a reference for you. And so you do have to sign a code of conduct. Education, unlike the PMP, if any of you are PMP certified, which I also am, is that they only require a high school education. So you don't get any bonus points like PMP for a college education. Application fee is the same for both. And the exam, if you are an IIBA member, is $350. If you are not member, it's $505. So it kind of pays to be a member. CCBA, very similar, less years of experience though. So you could be an ECBA, which is an entry-level business analyst. You could be not managers. A lot of times I'll have in my class when I teach the certification class, I'll have managers going, well, I do have some experience, but not a lot. Non-BA consultants or trainers, sometimes project managers have enough experience to get that because they kind of do wear both hats. But you only need 3,750 hours in the past 7 years. And a minimum of 900 either in 2 of the knowledge areas or 5 and 4 of those knowledge areas. So, and you only need 21, but because CCBA and CBAP are basically similar except for the questions, we merged them together. You still need to know the same stuff. It's just the questions are different. So we don't have a special certification prep class for CCBA and then one for CBAP. They're together. And it is only $250. You still have to pay your application fee, but $250 for the exam and $405 if you are a non-member. So I was talking about those knowledge areas where you needed 900 hours in 4 or 902 or 400 in a number of them. So this is the 6 knowledge areas in the BABOK. And so we have business analysis, planning, and monitoring. That's all about planning for your business analysis effort. This is not planning the project. We're only going to plan for our staff. Who are my stakeholders? Who do I need to elicit from? What elicitation techniques might I use? What documentation do I need to create? Depending on if I'm in Agile or Waterfall. So that would change it. So it's only my planning. I may give it to a project manager to incorporate into their big project plan, but otherwise it's just my work for my stuff. How long do I need? What artifacts do I need to create? And then you can see here where there's 3 in the outer ring, right? So planning is the outer ring because we plan for everything. We elicit and collaborate. So we collaborate with our stakeholders and elicit information from our stakeholders. And that includes all of it too. I can elicit information for planning. I can elicit information from managing the requirements. And any of these core analysis areas as well. And then on here, we have requirements lifecycle management, which is also whenever you get the requirements, you got to manage them, whether it's a user story or whether it is, a business requirements document, a list of requirements, whatever it is, you have to manage that. Then we have 3 center rings. This is kind of more of the life cycle of it because the other 3 were more supporting. You do this all the time. The 3 in the middle are strategy analysis. That's that pre-project work, understanding the current state, defining the future state, understanding the gap because we're not in the future state. This includes understanding the business need. What is the problem and the opportunity we're trying to, go towards, either to fix if it's a problem or go after if it's an opportunity. And so that is kind of a lot of times the pre-project work. Sometimes we get involved in this strategy analysis effort before it goes through, maybe a business case or portfolio management, and then it gets blessed. So that's kind of the pre-work. If the pre-work hasn't been done, obviously that'll be part of the project, but a lot of times it's pre-project work. Requirements analysis and design is getting all the requirements, documenting all the requirements, doing some business design, not the functional design. And so looking at those pieces, and that's during project. That's what most people think of when as a business analyst. It's like, oh, okay, you're gonna collect the requirements and elicit the requirements and document the requirements, and that's all in requirements analysis and design of definition. And then we have solution evaluation. This is kind of the end of the project. And so solution evaluation is where we evaluate either the solution component or the solution itself and says, hey, did it meet the needs? If we thought this was going to increase productivity, did it? If we were going to do this because it's going to increase revenue, did it? So we have to evaluate the solution at the end. And this is an area where I think it's getting better for organizations, but a lot of organizations still don't do this. So I have a couple questions. Do a lot of project managers also hold a CCBA or CBAP? I would say a lot of them do. I have both, but also I see students in my classes that also have both, or they have their PMP already. And or they're just maybe they don't have their PMP, but they want to also get their CBAP because they're doing more business analysis. So, project managers a lot of times, as you know, wear a number of hats. So yes, they can also hold a CCBA or CBAP. And then let's see, I'm my CAP. Yeah. Brandy, so you could easily go for CCBA or the CBAP, whichever you think is, you meet the eligibility criteria, but certainly can do that because it's really nice because they go hand in hand. You need a business analyst, you need a project manager on a project, and sometimes, if we don't have a particular business analyst, that might be the way to go. The other thing you can look at is ECBA if you don't want to get into the really nitty details. It still will give you a really good overview of business analysis. So ECBA is like a 2-hour exam instead of a 4.5-hour exam. So it is more entry level like CAPM is. So it might be something else to think about, but we'll welcome you no matter what. All right, so let's start. How do we apply? How do we even get there? So if you're interested in applying, you do have to, I would suggest go to iiba.org, and they have handbooks that will help you go through it. It kind of tells you what you need to do. So they have a handbook for CCBA, they have a handbook for CBAP, they have a handbook for ECBA. All of their exams have a handbook. And this tells you, confirms the eligibility criteria, how you fulfill your requirements, how do you log your hours. So remember again that you need professional development hours, which is 35 for CBAP, 21 for CCBA. You need the hours for the work history, 7,500 or 3,750, and 2 references. Now, the interesting thing is that your 2 references you do have to give. You don't have a choice. But they may or may not contact your references. And so once you get your application done, is that you submit it, and then they'll tell you fairly shortly whether you're good to go, and then you can start, studying for the exam, or sometimes people start studying before they do the application. But it doesn't take very long to get approved. So of course you have to pay for it before they can approve. And you log in your eligibility details, all your hours, and where those hours came from. And we have to agree to a code of, excuse me, I'm so sorry. Agree to a code of conduct, terms and conditions, and then submit the application. And then like I said, it comes back really fast. It'll say you're good to go or no. And so if no, it'll say approved pending an audit. Now, before getting too crazy about this, sometimes the audit is because Maybe they have a question about something that maybe a class, maybe you had a professional development class, you didn't take a certification class, and they were kind of wondering about it. Or it could be something around your hours, your work hours that you put in and going, well, that's really a PM thing, so we're going to subtract those hours. So make sure you only put business analysis hours in your application and not project management work. And so make sure that you just kind of skim the BABOK and get accustomed to their terminology because you don't want to use PM terminology because it's easy to kind of wield it in there because especially if we wear both hats. But here's the other thing though. Sometimes it's because they have questions about your application. Sometimes it's because your number was up. Okay, so if any of you fly, it's like going through TSA, the security people, right? And sometimes they'll go, okay, go here and here and here. You know, people are just going in, and all of a sudden you get beeped. And it's not because you had any metal on you or anything else. It's just because your number was up. And so then instead of just going through the easy line, you have to, hold up your hands and get patted down to make sure you don't have anything. But it's just because your number was up, you know. So if you get an approved pending audit, just make sure you just take a deep breath and figure out why you were audited. And because it might be just because your number is up. So have the paperwork as much as you can to confirm that you have those hours or you have those professional development hours, those work hours, everything kind of in place. All right, and then you want to get the BABOK. So you can purchase this. You can purchase it. I think you can purchase from IIBA, Amazon, or if you become a member of IIBA, you can download it for free. It depends on some people just really like paper. And so then you're diving down into the nomenclature, what are the terms they use? What are the underlying competencies? Count them 50 techniques. I'm sorry to say, we got 50, which is a lot, but you have to know how to use them all and how to read them and all of that other stuff. But you want to take a dive into that. So you do have to allocate dedicated study time because let me tell you too that you should do it when you're alert because the BABOK is very dry. I'm sorry to say. Good stuff, really good stuff. Don't get me wrong. And things you certainly need for the exam, but it's not like reading a novel. You go through a couple pages, and if you're doing it at night before bedtime, you might fall asleep. I'll speak for myself. So understand how you read it, understand, and I'm going to show you that in the next slide. But being able to kind of figure out how do you read this? Because I find that it's just like it's just stuff. It's just chunks of stuff. And for me, I need to bring it together at a higher level, saying, okay, how does this connect to this, to connect to this, to connect to this? So we'll talk a little bit more about the structure, but start with the introduction, know what in the heck it is. They don't call it best practices. They just say common practices. So the BABOK was written by a lot of people who practice business analysis. They got them together and say, hey, if somebody wants to be a really good business analyst, what does that look like? And so it is actually stuff that maybe you haven't ever done as a business analyst, but someone somewhere does and says it's helpful to know as a business analyst. So remember, they don't call it best practice, but they call it, the common practices of a business analyst. These are generally what people need to know why they're doing the job. And so start with the introduction and then study by knowledge area. We showed you the 6 knowledge areas. So maybe I'll start with planning and monitoring. And then I want to practice applying the concepts. How would I apply this? Because the CCBA exam and the CBAP exam are very scenario based. say, well, you're a business analyst and here's the situation. What technique would you use? Or how would you approach the stakeholders? Maybe it's about an underlying competency, or maybe it's about a specific task in each of the knowledge areas. So your questions are going to be about applying the concepts. And then you might want to review the techniques and the competencies, take a few breaks, reflect, think about it, go back. And then where you can, take some self-assessment. So you can, make your own questions. There are a lot of online simulations. We have one. We'd be very happy to provide you with access to it. You get it free if you take our class. If you don't want to take our class, then you can always just purchase it on its own as well. So practice those and review previous sections as needed. It's like, now what were they saying about this again? I might have to go back. But stay consistent. So what helped me, and I know what helps others, because they'll come back and say, hey, I passed. So I always ask people what their study schedule is. And this doesn't have to be always true, but it is so easy to have stuff happen to you. It's crazy at work, it's crazy at home. You intended to study. It's like, oh yeah, I'll have to do that later. And pretty soon later never happens. I've had some people who gone through my CBAP prep course, and then, it's 2 weeks before the deadline because your application is only good for 1 year. And they go, oh, I got to take this before, because you don't really want to pay for it again, right? You got to pay for the application again. So you don't want to wait till the end. So really carve out time and create. It takes about 1 to 3 months to study for it. Unless I've had some people now that said, I'm on vacation. That's all I'm gonna do on vacation. Well, doesn't sound like a fun vacation, but you can do it. I've had people do that. But generally, we kind of weave it into all the other stuff we have, and I had to do this too. It's like, okay, I'm gonna look at this for 2 hours every day, or I'm gonna take Saturday and Sunday in the morning before the kids are up and study for it, or whatever it is. So just kind of weaving it in, and then stick to your study schedule, because it's so easy to say, oh, I'd rather be doing something else. And pick a time where there's not a lot of family celebrations or whatever, because it can get crazy. And I did mine over Thanksgiving, which was kind of a mistake, because Thanksgiving was a big time in our family of getting together. So understanding the structure, I said one of the key things is understanding the structure. And so you have the BABOK, right? It's the business analysis body of knowledge. It is broken down to knowledge areas. Remember, we have 6 knowledge areas. Each knowledge area, okay, has generally 5 tasks. There's one knowledge area that has 4, another one that has 6, but generally 5 tasks. And those are, okay, if I'm doing planning and monitoring, let's say, I've got 5 tasks that I need to do. I need to plan for this. I need to plan for this. I need to plan for this. So I need to plan for my activities. I need to plan for stakeholder engagement. I need to plan for performance reviews. So it's all the stuff you have to plan. And so each one of those will have, like I said, about 5 tasks. And each task will have a purpose. What in the heck is the purpose of this task? Okay, so it'll tell you. Description goes more into detail of why you should care, besides passing the exam. And then it has inputs. What are the inputs? So tasks sometimes seem like a little bit of processes, right? Because it has an input. What are the things I need before I can do this task? I have elements of the thing of, okay, what are kind of this, either the steps in the task, considerations for the task, things I just need to know for this task. Okay, those are elements. And then guidelines and tools are things that will help me do the task, as well as techniques. And then we also talk about stakeholders. What are the core stakeholders who would be involved in this task? Because you're not going to involve everyone. You might involve some stakeholders early in the game and some at the end of the game. And then outputs. What do I get at the end? So that is the structure. So just so you can get some cadence, it's like, okay, I'm going to study this knowledge area. It's got 5 tasks. And if I can start understanding the purpose, the description, inputs, the outputs, it just helps me a bit. The other thing is, remember, this is really about the knowledge areas, the 6 knowledge areas. You also have a chapter with 29 underlying competencies that you need to read. I would suggest just skimming through them because most of the time, this is stuff we all use in our real world, communication. That's our job. So, so I usually tell people just, you need to know it, but skim it. And if there's any section going, well, I've never heard that before. I don't know what that is. You may want to dig deeper, kind of know when to use each. But the techniques, which I said are 50, count them 50. And some of them, it's really actually more because they will group techniques like these are similar. So we're just going to group it under one technique. So you need to know the sub-techniques as well in there. And you do need to know all the techniques. So preparing is, I always suggest taking a prep class. I have always myself taken prep classes, even though I do this stuff for a living. But unless it's really a simple exam, sometimes there's only hour exam. Sometimes some of my exams are 40 minutes. It's like, I'll just study on my own. But it helps to take a prep class and you can hear it in other people's, language and help understand. I don't know what they're saying here, help me out. So that's always nice. So join a study group. Like I said, a lot of IIBA chapters have study groups that help me pass the PMP. I know I got together with a group of friends who were going through the same thing and we could, feed off each other. Any study aids, and I want to say if you go to watermarklearning.com, so I'm going to ask Mariella to put it into the into the chat for me while I'm talking. There are, if you go into the resource area, we have a CBAP study guide, which really takes the study guide, the BABOK, and puts it into like normal conversation and how you would actually use it. And people have found that, very helpful. I go to a lot of conferences for IIBA, and that's the one thing that everybody wants. Oh, I want that. We usually give some of them out as a drawing, but everybody just said, oh yeah, I used to study guide. It was so helpful because it puts it in everyday English. It's just like, okay, I know this is what they're saying. It's just dry, blah, 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 blah. But here's how you would use it. And here's an example of it, and it just takes the BABOK and breathes life into it, so to speak. So we have study guides, we have study tables that say, okay, it talks about all the tasks at once. So it's like, well, maybe I'm going to look at elicitation collaboration, and I can just see a big picture of how anything relates and it talks about it and flashcards. We have flashcards. You can make your own flashcards. Sometimes that's helpful actually doing it, but make sure you check out watermarklearning.com. And I'm just going to, I don't know if I can get to everybody. Can I get to everyone? I can, yes. So I'm just going to put it in the chat. And look under resources, and then you'll look under the certification and you'll find the resources. So you don't have to, but a lot of students have found it helpful. And you can do individual study, which I certainly recommend. Create a study plan. So again, making that cadence, that frequency helps a lot. And then taking practice exams. We have a lot of Watermark Learning again under resources, certification prep. You can purchase, if you don't want to take the full 4-day class, you can purchase our online exam simulator. There certainly are others on the market that you can take too. Usually we say if you pass with about a rate of 70%, you're doing pretty good. So this is more than, if you take an APMG class, oftentimes it's, out of 50 questions, you got 25 to get ready. It's about 50%. So on CBAP and CCBA, they don't tell us. IIBA does not tell us, no matter how many times I've asked. But it's roughly 70 or so to pass the exam. And then you're going to want to do your final prep. Okay. So the median time, and this is based over, gosh, we've been teaching CBAP, I don't know, 20 years, 25, ever since it came out. The founders of Watermark Learning were actually responsible for creating the original body of knowledge and have put a lot of thought. So they were kind of some of the thought leaders that first created this. And so our experience has been that it's generally about 100 hours of studying. That doesn't mean you can't do it in less. That doesn't mean it might be a little bit more depending on your experience and how fast you synthesize information. Generally, it's 6 to 8 weeks to 3 months. Most people take it within 3 months. Again, like I said, life happens. Sometimes they've had to push it back because something, maybe work got crazy or whatever. And so as you do your final prep, make sure you focus on the areas that you have trouble with. So again, if you took the exam practice exams and say, gee, I'm not doing as well as, in strategic business analysis. And maybe that's a lot because I don't normally work in this environment. So I'm usually, when the project starts, I'm an analyst then. So analysis and documentation come really easy to me, but I'm not sure I really get this strategic business analysis. Well, then I might want to spend a little bit more time on it, understanding it, at least for the exam. The other thing is rest well and test well. I love that because that never works for me. I have a lot of certifications behind my name. And let me tell you, I get, interestingly enough, I still get nervous. I get clammy. And I don't rest well because I'm worried about it. So, but if you can, rest well. Rashmi, yes, there will be a recording of this class. And so you'll be getting an email saying thank you for your attendance, and you'll get a link to the recording. So, and then once your application is approved, you get to take the exam. And so you want to, again, look at the handout, review the exam rules, the system requirements. Okay, pay the exam fee and then schedule your exam. Now you got two ways to schedule the exam. You can do it in person at a PSI certification center, exam center, or you can do it online. So I could do it from my kitchen. But the thing is you have to make sure that it's going to be a place where you do not get interrupted at all, because if you get interrupted, the exam stops. Whether it's your dog or your kids or whatever, the exam stops. And you really don't want that. So you really have to find a place away from everyone, whether it's at work and maybe you're in a conference room because you have just a cube. Lock that door. Don't let anyone in. Saying do not disturb, because the minute somebody starts talking to you, oh, just a second, so and so is here for you or whatever, and there goes all your hard work and time just went down the drain. So it has to be somewhere where you're not going to get interrupted. You have all your stuff off your desk, and you don't have any ancillary docking stations or monitors attached, because that'll kick you out too. Because that did it for me. I was taking my CBDA, sort of business analysis, data analytics exam, and I kept, I took all my monitors off, everything else, but I was using the docking station for electricity for my laptop because, I didn't want to run out of electricity in the middle of the exam. And every time I went into the docking station, it kicked me out. And I could figure it out at first. It's like, oh my gosh, and I'm freaking out because half hour later before I was supposed to start, And then it finally dawned on me. So I went and got the electrical cord, just put it right into electrical socket, and then I didn't get kicked out anymore. So no docking stations. I'll just give you a couple tips there because that I was just freaked out. It's like, no, I got to take the test after, freaking out of not getting in. And the nice thing is the application, you got a year. So a year gives you a lot of time to be able to take the exam. Hopefully that works. So the focus of the exams are a little bit different. CBAP is case study based. So it has a situation it has a number they call pages. It's usually 2, 3, 4 paragraphs long. So you got to zip through that, and then you have each case study may have 2, 3, 4 scenario questions about the case study. So what I usually suggest is read the case study, then read the situation statement, the scenario, then read all the answers, and then read the scenario again to make sure what they're asking. The good thing is they're all multiple choice, A, B, C, and D. There's 120 questions for CBAP because it does take a little bit longer to read the case studies. CCBA is 130. CCBA only has scenario-based questions. Like you are, a business analyst doing XYZ. How would you, work with the stakeholder, or how would you manage this conflict, or what techniques would you use? Or oftentimes too, they give you a model. Like let's say they give you a data model. They gave me a data model. And they'd ask 3, 4 questions around the data model because I needed to know how to read that data model. What was the crow's feet indicating? What was the cardinality? How is this entity related to another entity? So anytime you are looking at your techniques and go online or something, look to say, hey, what does this look like in real life and how do I read it? Because there will be questions, like they said, they brought up a data model and they asked me 4 questions so that I could understand and how to read it. The length of the CBAP test, is, sorry about that, a little bit greater there. Accidentally touched my mouse. 3.5 hours versus 3 hours. So, let's see. If you are able to do it online, is it an open book exam? No. The only thing you can have on your desk is a glass of water, but it has to be clear. It has to be clear glass of water. You can run to the restroom if you have to, because it's 3.5 hours. However, the clock keeps ticking, so make it fast. And even if you could, you wouldn't have time to look it up anyway, because it is an extensive exam. So it is a closed book. But you can have a blank piece of paper. You got to show them the paper, it's back and forth. So, it's like, okay, here's my paper, here's the front of it, here's the back of it, nothing on it. And you can have a pencil so you can jot some notes or do whatever you need. But a pencil or pen, plain pieces of paper, and a clear glass of water. And then when you're done, if you had paper, they have to watch you rip it out to little bitty pieces. So here is the blueprint, and this will tell you where your questions are. So business analysis and BA profession, that's chapter 1. The numbers behind it are referred to the chapter as well as the areas to study. So I would just read that for edification. Don't need to do a whole lot. Key concepts. I would read some of the key concepts because some of the key concepts are like, what are the 5 different types of requirements? And if you don't know them, you're going to have a hard time answering questions on the test. So, and then underlying competencies, like I said, there's 29 underlying competencies, there's 50 techniques. Now, here's the interesting thing. This is IIBA's blueprint. This isn't mine, but it says NA. And I've had students in my class say, well, I took it, but there were a lot of technique questions. Oh my gosh. And it says NA in their blueprint. Well, unfortunately, it says not applicable, but what it really means is that those underlying competencies, those key concepts, those techniques are incorporated into the number of questions. So look at requirements analysis and design definition. In CCBA, there's 42 questions. In CBAP, 36. A lot of them are underlying competencies and technique questions. So what they did is they took all these chapters, these 4 chapters, and brought them into the 6 knowledge areas. So the knowledge areas look like, oh yeah, they have lots of questions. They do, but some of those questions actually have to do with underlying competencies within that knowledge area. So strategy analysis might talk about some competencies and maybe facilitating, being able to facilitate a group to, on understanding current state or defining future state. So they bring all this together. So don't make the assumption, oh, it says NA, I don't need to know these. I'll just go through the 6 knowledge areas. That's not true, because it'll get you into trouble, because you definitely need to know them. And then you take the exam. On exam day, I don't know if any of us are hungry when we're nervous, but just in case, it says to eat. Do something that relaxes you. Here's the thing. Not only do you have to have it at a quiet place, or go to an online testing center if there's one around. So the other thing is to be able to take, when you schedule the exam, and I probably should have mentioned this when we were talking about scheduling, when you schedule the exams, schedule it when you're most alert. Like morning is best for me. I usually take all my exams in the morning, because by afternoon I am dragging butt. And it's always been that way. Like 2, 3 o'clock, it's like my little, clock goes a little slow. And then it speeds up in the afternoon again, or later in the afternoon or evening. So, try and avoid whatever lulls. I mean, if you are a person who rises and says, "Guy, I have to have 6 cups of coffee before I can even function," maybe you pick a different time. So pick it when you're most alert. And then you'll take the exam. I always say, even you can flag the exam questions. So let's say it's like, ooh, gosh, B or D, B or D, B or D. Okay, I'm gonna pick B. What I suggest, and then I might flag it because I want to come back to it if I have time. So you can flag them, and then when you get all done with all, 100 and some, then I can go up. It shows you which ones you flagged, and it's like, okay, 32, I got to hit 32 because you don't want to go through them all again, just hit the flagged ones. But I always answer it, because there are times where I've had, and I said I have a lot of certifications, I do, but sometimes I've almost ran out of time. And I, at least, if I flag them, and if I have time, that's great, I can go back. But I've always answered them, because if I don't answer, it's wrong. It's not like you get discount points because you didn't answer. So I'm going to always pick something, and then I might flag it to say, if I have time, I can always go back. But if I don't, at least I have it answered. And so you finish all those questions up, you're going like, oh. And then they're always nice to give you a little survey. How was this? And you're going like, just give me just tell me if I passed or not, please. I don't want to do a survey. But you can do the survey, and then you're going like, submit, and you're going like, oh, did I pass? Did I not pass? So if you passed, you're going to get an email. Well, first of all, you'll get pass or fail immediately. They'll tell you right there. Don't even have to wait. If you pass, you get an email from IIBA congratulating you, saying, hey, you did great. Here are the 6 knowledge areas. Here's how you did in each one. And they'll say either lower, higher, or I think average or whatever. I forget what the middle one was, but it doesn't tell you much. But if you had to take it over again and you got, lower in a number of them, it's like, oh, I need to study better there. So if you don't pass, you can retake the exam. You still have to pay for it, but it's a cheaper rate than having to pay full price. And you might want to study again on those things that you got marked that are lower. And the nice thing is now you used to have a waiting period of 3 months. You couldn't take it until 3 months from the time you took the first exam. Now, if you want to take it the next day, I would suggest studying, but if you want to take it the next day, you could. Let's see. What other questions? Tracy had a question. Are some questions given more weight? Is it the case where you can get 1 point for each correct answer? You get 1 point per answer. Questions are not given more weight. The interesting thing is that they said, because I always ask them, what's the passing rate? And they'll never give. Well, some people might have a tougher exam than somebody next to them, so their passing rate will be lower than the person next to them who has got an easier question exam. That's what they say. I'm not sure I believe it, but it is not 50%, so it's more like 70-75%. And and what does comparable for all category? That means you kind of compare. You're even with most people answering those questions that way and comparable to how many they got in that area. So if it says strategic business analysis lower, elicitation and collaboration comparable, then it means that you did similar to lots of people. If you did higher, you did higher than most people. If you get lower, you got less right than most people. It doesn't give you a lot, but at least it kind of gives you a direction. Okay, testing tips, and I think I talked a lot about this. Again, don't second guess yourself because sometimes we read too much into the question, and a lot of times go, "Oh no, I think it's D." And then what I find, because I actually proctor exams, and some of them are still in the bubble sheets. People will race the question, the right answer to the wrong answer. So sometimes don't second guess yourself. Don't read too much into it, but make sure you're answering the question they want because it'll be a scenario, maybe two or three statements, and they put crap in there, not crap, but they put ancillary information in it. And so you really have to say, what question are they answering? And so I'll read the scenario, read all the answers because that gives me kind of clues to what they're looking for. And then I'll go back and say, what are you really asking me? So again, guess if you must, don't change your answers unless you're absolutely positively sure. Make sure you watch the time and it'll be on your screen. For CCBA, reads the question again carefully, all the answers, then make sure you're answering the right question. Because like I said, they put fluff in those things. And I think just to kind of they're not really asking this, they're really asking this. And usually the base question is at the bottom. Here's what I need from you. Here's what we're looking for. So, but make sure you just read it clearly. And then, like I said, CBAP, read the state study, read the questions, all the answers, and then make sure you know what question you're answering. So let's say you pass. Yay! Okay, so you do have to recertify, I'm sorry to say, after all that work. 60 CDUs every 3 years. What I usually do is try and aim for 20 each year so that I don't have to 2 weeks before my certification is up. I have to get all 60 because it's like, oh, that's going to take me way too long. And believe me, nobody wants to take this exam again. No, you really don't. Trust me, you really don't, unless you have to. So make sure you get your 60 CDUs. Like I said, I tag even in my calendar, I put it in there saying, hey, remember to put your 20 CDUs for this year in so you don't have to wait till the end. Just some fun facts here. Here are some reasons that people have wanted the higher confidence. We talked about that. New job, salary. The average business analysis professional, IIBA does these surveys every year. And their surveys on the average say certified business analyst makes 20% more than non-certified. And would you recommend? Most people would recommend the certification. And then how soon did you get benefits? Usually people get it at least in the first 6 months. It gives, again, more confidence and, maybe gives you like up to, moving up in the ladder. Numbers, in case you're wondering, how many of us are there? So a CCBA, you can see how much growth it's had since 2020 when we started keeping track. 2020, there was only 13. Now there's over 4,000, 1,300. And CBAP went from 10,000, they increased in the last, like about 5 years, 15,740. So they've been doubling. I think they're going to be doing that more and more because it seems like it takes a while to get it going. People go, oh, maybe I want this, and then pretty soon it starts extrapolating up. Ways what we can help you. You can register for a 4-day prep class, check out our study materials. We have lots of them. Do the online practice exams, download free templates. And then just join us. We have a lot of webinars and events and things like that you can certainly be part of. And then also, if you contact our customer service team, if you want to, because a bundle, so we offer a 30% discount. And so what does that mean? It means that you have to pay us up front for the application and the exam and membership. But by doing so, you get a 30% discount. So you get basically a free membership. And that includes a membership to the local IIBA chapter, and you don't have to pay for that. You just have to pick which one you want. And they automatically give you the one that's closest to where you're at. But you can pick someplace else if you want. And then it'll give you all the resources. They have a knowledge hub that is phenomenal with other templates and tools. And, if you want a BRD document, it also gives you a digital copy of Understanding the BABOK. So if you're interested, I would say get to info@watermarklearning.com and tell them you want to sign up for a class and get that 30% discount. And speaking of classes, there's one in September and one in November coming up. It is 4 days, so you need to have enough time to go through it, but they are recorded. So if you miss, an hour or so, you can go back and listen to the recording. So I have a couple minutes to answer any other questions. What can I do for y'all?
Excellent, Dr. Hyder. I went ahead and threw in some links while we wait for any feedback or any additional questions. I know you answered so many throughout the session, so thank you so much. But in the meantime, I did throw in our resource hub so you can check out all the
Perfect.
amazing things
Perfect.
that Dr. Hydorn chatted about, a little bit more about Watermark, a little bit more about CBAP, CCBA, and again, a little bit more about any additional continuous learning you want to be doing with our webinars. So, with that said, I will give you all 1 minute back. Oh, actually,
Oh, the one, yeah, Delani. It does, it impact AI so far has impacted the field in that it certainly makes documentation easier. Sometimes it's the tools you use. It certainly can, if you create the requirements, you can have AI write them in good fashion, but you got to make sure you understand what that looks like. But you still need, I mean, because, a lot of times businesses will go, well, AI is going to replace me. You still need a brain. And AI will only do what you tell it to do. And even when you go out and give it something, it's just sometimes it takes garbage, sometimes it doesn't understand what you're asking. So we still all need our strategic thinking and our critical thinking skills in order to do this job. But yeah, it is impacting us somewhat in the documentation and the tools we use. So seen a lot of that.
and I'm
And
sure
that would be a
it'll.
really good webinar to talk about, Mariella. We can put it down on our list of things to do maybe fourth quarter.
Absolutely. Any other? I'll give us all another couple seconds for some questions, maybe.
Oh, the full package, the 30% discount, it does include you would pay for the class and then you would pay for the exams and the application up front. But then when you sign into IIBA, they will have that information, so they give you that 30%. You would already have paid it anyway, so you don't have to pay again.
Excellent. Alrighty. Well, I believe that'll be it for us today. So thank you so much, Dr. Hydorn. This was a lot of fantastic info. And yeah, if you need any more info, go ahead and click on those links. We'll send them over to you as well in the webinar recording after the email. So be on the lookout for that. So that being
Good
said,
luck, everyone.
good luck. Enjoy the rest of your day. And thanks so much for joining us today, everyone. Bye for now, and we'll catch you in the next one.